Are you a dog, Serena? Have you gone mad? Eating from the trash. Who in their right sense does that? The words cracked through the air like a whip. Justin Brooks's booming voice filled the kitchen, making the staff stiffen where they stood. The billionaire's fury was enough to silence even the clatter of pots and the hum of the refrigerator. Serena Henson froze, caught in the harsh glare of his eyes. She was crouched low beside the gleaming stainless steel trash bin, clutching a half-eaten sandwich with trembling fingers. Her cheeks flushed with shame, her stomach twisting not just with hunger but humiliation. She tried to steady her voice, but it wavered. Mr. Brooks, I wasn't stealing. Justin cut her off, his jaw clenched tight. Don't insult my intelligence. I pay you a salary. You have access to food. Yet here you are, on your knees in my kitchen, digging through garbage like some stray animal. The other staff whispered behind their hands, eyes wide. None dared step forward. None dared defend her. To them, she was already guilty. Serena swallowed hard, her pride aching. I haven't eaten in 3 days, she said softly. Every dollar I make goes straight to my sister's treatments. Trisha is 20, sir. She has kidney failure. Dialysis costs everything, and I can't let her go without it. I didn't want to steal from the pantry. This was just leftover. The confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Some of the cooks looked away, ashamed. But Justin's face remained like stone. Excuses, he snapped. You think your personal sob story justifies this? You should be ashamed, Serena. I built this house on discipline, not pity. Her lips trembled, but she forced herself to stand. Her eyes locked with his, shining with a mix of pain and defiance. I am ashamed, sir. But I'd rather carry shame than let my sister die. I promised her I'd take care of her since we were kids in foster care. Even if it means I go hungry. For a brief moment, Justin faltered. He saw the fire in her gaze, the kind of conviction money couldn't buy. But he shook it off quickly, hiding any flicker of doubt. Reckless, he muttered, turning away. You're reckless, Serena. And I don't tolerate recklessness. His footsteps echoed down the marble hall, each one striking her chest like a hammer. Slowly, Serena placed the sandwich back into the bin, her hands shaking from weakness. Hunger gnawed at her insides, but humiliation burned hotter. In that moment, a memory returned, a tiny foster home bedroom, her younger sister shivering beneath a thin blanket, whispering through tears. Don't leave me, Serena. And Serena, only a child herself, pulling her close and vowing, I'll protect you. Always. That vow was why she was still standing. Why she'd rather starve than fail. And though Justin Brooks saw only disgrace, Serena knew the truth. This wasn't her breaking point. It was the spark of something far bigger. If this moment gripped you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Tales by Amani, where stories of sacrifice, struggle, and unexpected twists come to life. The next morning, the mansion carried an air that was heavier than usual. Every polished floor seemed to echo with whispers. Every corner Serena turned, she felt eyes digging into her back. She's been stealing for months, one maid muttered while polishing silverware. I knew it, another hissed, glancing around before lowering her voice. Quiet ones are always the worst. Who knows what else she's taken? Their words spread through the hallways like smoke from a fire. Staff who once nodded politely now looked at Serena with suspicion, some even with disgust. They never saw the truth. They only saw the billionaire's fury from the night before. That was enough to convict her. Serena walked with her head lowered, her hands tightly clutching the laundry basket she carried. Each step felt heavier, not from the load of linen but from the shame pressing down on her shoulders. She told herself to stay quiet, to keep working. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Trisha needed her. But no matter how hard she tried, the whispers cut deep. Caught digging in the trash. Pathetic. Ungrateful. Doesn't she get paid well? Every sentence was a knife. Every sideways glance was a wound. That night, Serena lay awake on her small cot in the servants' quarters. Her stomach growled, But hunger wasn't the only thing keeping her restless. Memories kept flooding back. She thought of Trisha, her sweet, soft-spoken sister with wide eyes that always carried a trace of sadness. Trisha, who had once dreamed of becoming a nurse. Trisha, who now spent her days hooked to a dialysis machine, her body weak but her spirit refusing to break. Serena remembered the first time she sat in that cold hospital room, watching the machine pump her sister's blood in and out, keeping her alive. The smell of antiseptic, the quiet beeping of the monitors, the nurse's gentle warning. It's expensive. Very expensive. And it doesn't end. Serena had nodded, clutching her sister's thin hand. She hadn't cried in front of Trisha. But later, in the hospital restroom, she had collapsed onto the floor and wept until her throat hurt. That was the night she promised herself she would do anything, to keep her sister alive. And she had kept that promise. She skipped meals. She walked instead of taking the bus when she could. She mended her old shoes until the soles nearly gave way. She wore uniforms that no longer fit, tightening them with safety pins. Every dollar went straight to Trisha's treatments. Serena closed her eyes, and another memory came, one of her childhood. 2 little girls in a foster home, huddled together in the dark. They had nothing, no parents, no family, no safety net. Just each other. Back then, the foster home covered Trisha's early medical bills. The staff were strict but not cruel, and though Serena prayed every night that someone would adopt them, nobody ever came. Families came and went, choosing younger, healthier children. Serena and Trisha were always left behind. As the years passed and they grew older, the foster home slowly loosened its grip. "You'll have to make it on your own soon," one of the caretakers had warned. And when Serena turned 18, they really did let go. The support stopped. The bills piled up again. Trisha's condition worsened, and suddenly it was just the 2 of them against the world. "I'll always protect you, Trish," Serena had whispered back then. And Trisha, only 13 at the time, had clung to her like a lifeline. The memory gave her strength now, even as humiliation and hunger gnawed at her. Still, the cruelty of the mansion walls didn't stop. The whispers grew louder. Staff sneered when she passed. One even accidentally knocked a glass of water onto the floor near her feet, smirking as she cleaned it up. Through it all, Serena stayed silent. She had no defense, no one to speak for her. But upstairs, Justin Brooks couldn't sleep either. He sat in his study, a glass of scotch in his hand, staring into the fire. His mind replayed the scene in the kitchen over and over. Serena's trembling hands. Her cracked voice. Her eyes. Filled with desperation and shame. He told himself it didn't matter. She was reckless. Out of line. He couldn't allow weakness in his household. And yet, something about her words clung to him. "Every dollar I make goes to my sister's treatments." Justin frowned, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. He didn't like feeling conflicted. For years, his world had been sharp, clean, orderly. Rules were rules. Money bought obedience. Those who disobeyed didn't last. But this maid, Serena, was different. There had been no greed in her eyes, no arrogance, no sly calculation. Just hunger and love. Love so fierce, it pushed her to shame herself for her sister's sake. Justin leaned back in his chair, his mind restless. The world had hardened him long ago, but Serena's desperation stirred something he hadn't felt in years. A discomfort. A flicker of, what was it? Compassion. No. He shook the thought away. He couldn't afford compassion. And yet, the memory of her voice whispered through his thoughts like an echo he couldn't silence. "I'd rather carry shame than let my sister die." Those words refused to leave him. Downstairs, Serena wiped her tears in silence, still carrying the weight of every whisper, every cruel glance. She didn't know it yet, but the walls of Justin Brooks's heart, cold, unshaken for years, had begun to crack. Justin Brooks sat alone in his office that night, the glow of the city lights spilling through the tall glass windows. On his desk were the numbers, contracts, deals, profits. He had built an empire out of nothing. People respected him, feared him, envied him. Yet tonight, all he could see in his mind was Serena Henson, trembling in his kitchen, clutching that half-eaten sandwich like it was gold. "Are you a dog, Serena?" His own words echoed back in his head. Harsh, cruel, and yet, something about the look in her eyes wouldn't leave him. For the first time in years, Justin thought about his own mother. He hadn't been born into the world of marble floors and private jets. No. His childhood was a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of a small town. His father was gone, and his mother worked double shifts at a diner just to pay the rent. Some nights, Justin went to bed with nothing but water in his stomach. But the memory that cut deepest was this: watching his mother push her plate away at dinner, smiling faintly as she told him she wasn't hungry. He knew better. She was starving, but she wanted him to eat instead. Serena's hollow face in the kitchen had taken him back to that very moment. He shook his head, trying to bury it under years of hardened discipline. "She's an employee, nothing more," he muttered. But deep inside, the image gnawed at him. The next morning, Justin sat at his desk again, but this time his focus wasn't on a new real estate deal. He opened a secure folder, pulling up Serena's employee file. Clean record. Never late. Never complained. No warnings. Her payroll logs were clear too, every paycheck wired to the same account. Curious, he traced it further. From there, the money was almost immediately redirected to a hospital clinic. Dialysis. Kidney treatments. A patient listed as Serena Henson. Age 20. Relation. Sister. Justin leaned back in his chair. So it was true. Every cent Serena earned went straight into those hospital bills. And she had been surviving on nothing. For a moment, he almost laughed at himself. Here he was, the mighty Justin Brooks, spending thousands on a single dinner with clients, while a young woman under his own roof was starving just to keep her sister alive. But he didn't laugh. He frowned. Hard. Meanwhile, Serena moved through the mansion like a ghost. Her body was weak, but her pride wouldn't let her show it. Every morning she pressed her uniform, tied her hair neatly, and went about her duties in silence. Still, the whispers followed her. In the halls, in the kitchen, in the laundry room, her co-workers hissed cruel words behind her back. "She's a church rat," one maid muttered. "I bet she's been doing it for months," another added. "I hope Mr. Justin will fire her soon," someone whispered with a smirk. Serena kept her eyes down. She didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't explain. What good would it do? Words never protected her before. Only work did. Only sacrifice did. In the quiet moments, though, hunger clawed at her. Her stomach growled as she scrubbed the marble floors, but she ignored it. At night, when she lay in her tiny staff room, she pressed her hands against her belly to muffle the sound. She thought of Trisha hooked up to machines, fighting every day to breathe, and told herself it was worth it. Back in his office, Justin stared at the hospital records again. He thought of the young woman's voice cracking in the kitchen. "I haven't eaten in 3 days." He hated that it reminded him of himself. He hated that it reminded him of his mother. He had clawed his way out of poverty, built walls around his heart, promised himself he'd never feel that helpless again. But here she was, under his roof, living the same story he had tried so hard to escape. That night, when he passed Serena in the hallway, he paused. She bowed her head quickly, whispering, "Good evening, sir," before rushing away. He didn't respond, but his eyes followed her. Her shoulders were thin, her steps slow. Pride kept her standing, but only barely. Justin clenched his jaw. For the first time in a long time, the billionaire who believed money could solve anything felt powerless. Serena, meanwhile, held on to one thought to survive: don't beg again. Don't let them see you break. Her pride was the last thing she had left, and she refused to lose it. But what she didn't know was that Justin Brooks, cold, ruthless, untouchable, was no longer just her boss. He was a man haunted by the shadows of his own past. And for the first time in years, his heart was stirring in ways he didn't understand. The sun poured through the tall windows of the mansion, casting long stripes of light across the polished staircase. Serena gripped the railing with one hand as she scrubbed a stubborn stain on the marble step. Her other hand shook as she pressed down with the rag. She hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Her body ached, her legs trembled, and her head swam with dizziness. Still, she pushed herself harder. If she slowed down, the whispers would only grow louder. If she stopped, someone else would take her place. She couldn't let that happen. But her body had other plans. Halfway down the staircase, the world tilted. The rags slipped from her fingers. Her knees buckled. A gasp escaped her lips before everything went black. Serena collapsed onto the stairs, her body crumpling like a discarded doll. The sound of the fall echoed through the mansion. 2 maids screamed. Within minutes, the mansion was in chaos. Justin Brooks came out of his office, his sharp voice cutting through the noise. "What happened?" She just fainted, sir," one of the staff stammered. Justin's eyes locked on Serena's still figure. For a second, he didn't breathe. The same woman he had accused of eating from the trash now lay pale and lifeless on his staircase. Something inside him twisted. "Get the doctor. Now." His voice was firm, but his heart pounded faster than he wanted to admit. The mansion's doctor arrived quickly, kneeling beside Serena. He checked her pulse, her breathing, her blood pressure. Finally, he looked up at Justin with a grave expression. "Malnutrition. Severe exhaustion. This young woman hasn't been eating properly for weeks." The words hit Justin harder than he expected. Malnutrition. Exhaustion. He thought of his mother again, skipping meals for his sake. He thought of Serena's trembling voice in the kitchen. "I haven't eaten in 3 days." She had been telling the truth all along. And he had called her a liar. "Move her to the guest suite," Justin ordered, his voice lower now. "Take care of her." Hours later, Serena's eyes fluttered open. She found herself in a soft bed, white sheets pulled over her fragile frame. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she saw him. Justin Brooks sat in a chair beside her bed, his broad shoulders leaning forward, his eyes fixed on her. He looked nothing like the cold, distant man who had once barked at her in the kitchen. "You fainted," he said quietly. Serena tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. Shame flushed her cheeks. "I'm sorry, sir. Please don't fire me. I can still work. I'll get better, I promise." Her voice cracked with desperation. "People like me don't get to explain. We just get replaced." The words cut deep. Justin had built his empire by replacing people. Employees, partners, anyone who failed to meet his standards. But hearing it from her, lying weak and helpless, made him see himself in a way he never had before. He leaned closer. "You're not being replaced, Serena. Rest. That's an order." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She didn't want to show weakness, not even now. "Please. I can't lose this job. My sister." "I know," Justin interrupted softly. "Trisha. The hospital bills. I've seen them." Serena froze. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. You looked into it?" He nodded. His voice was steady, but not cold this time. "You weren't lying. You've been keeping her alive at your own expense." Her lips trembled. She didn't know whether to be angry that he had dug into her life or relieved that finally, someone understood. Justin sat back in his chair, but his eyes never left her. For the first time in years, his mask cracked. The ruthless billionaire who had built walls around his heart now saw the truth right in front of him. A young woman, broken by sacrifice, but still refusing to give up. "You need strength to keep fighting for her," he said. "Starving yourself won't save Trisha. It'll just destroy you both." Serena turned her face away, too ashamed to answer. Justin let the silence stretch before finally saying what he had already decided. "I'll take care of her surgery. The bills. Everything." Her head snapped back toward him, eyes wide in shock. "What? No, I can't let you." "You don't have a choice," he said firmly, though his tone carried a warmth she had never heard before. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Trisha will get what she needs." Serena's throat tightened. She wanted to protest, but the words tangled inside her. Instead, silent tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time in years, someone had lifted the crushing weight off her shoulders. That night, Justin stepped out of the guest suite and stood alone in the hallway. He felt something stir inside him that money and success had never given him. Purpose. The girl he had once accused of being a thief had become his reminder of everything he had forgotten. Hunger, sacrifice, survival. And now, he had quietly resolved to help her. Not as her employer, but as a man who knew exactly what it felt like to be hungry and unseen. After a week under the close watch of the mansion's doctor, Serena was finally back on her feet. The dizziness had eased, the fainting spells had stopped, and she tried to lose herself again in the rhythm of daily chores. Dusting stair rails, polishing the grand mirrors, scrubbing the marble floors until they gleamed. But peace never lasted long in a place where whispers moved faster than footsteps. Kate, her fellow maid, a woman who had never liked her for reasons Serena could never understand, was at it again. Jealousy burned in Kate's eyes every time she caught Justin glancing Serena's way, even if only out of concern. And that envy turned into poison on her tongue. "She's been stealing for months," Kate hissed one morning as Serena passed by. "I saw her near the study last week," she told another worker, her voice dripping with false certainty. "First food, now jewelry. Just wait, she'll get caught." Serena kept her head down, her hands busy with endless chores. She scrubbed harder, worked faster, anything to block out the words. But no matter how much she tried, the shame clung to her like a second skin. She had done nothing wrong. Yet every corner of the mansion now felt like a courtroom, every glance like a verdict. Justin Brooks wasn't blind to it. He had built his empire by reading people. Investors, rivals, politicians. He knew when someone was lying. And something about these rumors didn't add up. Late one night, long after the mansion had gone quiet, he sat alone in his office. His jaw was tight as he opened the security feeds from the mansion. If Serena had been stealing, the truth would be there. The footage rolled on the screen. There she was, Serena, in the kitchen, late at night. Not stuffing her pockets with valuables. Not sneaking into rooms where she didn't belong. Just sitting by the counter, carefully wrapping half-eaten rolls in napkins, setting aside fruit that would have been thrown away. Justin leaned closer. She wasn't stealing. She was saving scraps. For herself. For survival. His chest tightened as the memory of her fainting on the staircase came back. The doctor's voice echoed in his head. Malnutrition. All this time, she wasn't guilty. She was hungry. But then, another clip surfaced. The date matched the day one of his cufflinks had gone missing. Justin's eyes narrowed. The figure in the footage wasn't Serena. It was Kate, one of the senior housemaids. She moved quickly, glancing over her shoulder before slipping the cufflink into her pocket. Later, in another clip, she could be seen whispering with two other staff members, shaking her head toward Serena as if planting the seed of blame. Justin's jaw clenched. Betrayal. It hadn't been Serena. It had been Kate all along, using the young maid's silence and humiliation as the perfect cover. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with its usual rhythm. Serena moved quietly, polishing silver in the dining hall, her shoulders heavy with invisible weight. Kate passed by, her smirk faint but sharp, like a knife twisted in the dark. Justin stepped into the room. His presence stilled the air. "Kate," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "In my office. Now." The staff glanced at one another, whispers already forming. Serena didn't look up. She was used to being invisible. Behind closed doors, Justin played the footage. Kate's face drained of color as her own betrayal stared back at her on the screen. She tried to stammer excuses, but Justin cut her short. "Save it," he said coldly. "You thought framing her would hide your theft. You were wrong." Kate had no defense. By the end of the day, her things were packed, and she was gone. For the first time in weeks, the mansion was quiet. No whispers followed Serena down the hall. No smirks trailed her in the kitchen. Still, she didn't know the truth. She didn't know Justin had seen the footage. She didn't know he had defended her in silence, rooting out the betrayal on his own. But Justin knew. That night, as he stood by the window of his study, staring out at the city lights, he realized something. Serena hadn't just been carrying her sister's burden. She had been carrying the weight of lies, cruelty, and humiliation inside his very house. And he had let it happen. Not anymore. This was the beginning of a change. Justin Brooks, the man known for his cold heart and ruthless rules, was starting to see her, not as the maid accused of eating from the trash, but as a woman who had been fighting battles no one else bothered to understand. And though he said nothing to her yet, his decision was clear. He would no longer let her stand alone. But not all of them were pleased. Some staff exchanged uneasy glances. Their pride stung that a maid had been raised above them with a single sentence. And a few of the guests, though silent, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Respect had been forced from their lips, not freely given. Still, the seed had been planted. For Serena, dignity had finally been restored. Not behind closed doors, not in secret, but in front of the very people who had mocked her existence. And for Justin, something deeper had taken root. He had drawn a line, made it clear that she was not disposable, not replaceable, not just a maid. The mansion was quiet that night. The clinking of glasses and the murmur of investors had faded hours ago. The chandeliers had dimmed, the long dining table now a cold stretch of empty plates and candle stubs. But in a far corner of the house, in the smallest of quarters, Serena Henson sat hunched over her phone. Her tiny room was hardly more than a box. A single bed pressed against the wall, a wooden chair tucked under a narrow desk, and a wardrobe with a squeaky door that never shut properly. Yet tonight, it glowed with warmth, not from the light bulb above, but from the little screen in Serena's hand. "Trish," she whispered, smiling through her exhaustion as the call connected. On the screen, her younger sister's face appeared. Trisha lay in a hospital bed, her frame thin beneath the blankets, her skin pale, but her eyes bright with a stubborn kind of hope. Tubes and machines beeped quietly in the background, but none of it dimmed her spirit. "Hey, stranger," Trisha said, her voice weak but playful. "You look like you've been wrestling with mop buckets again." Serena laughed softly, though her chest ached. "And winning, of course." Trisha grinned, then coughed lightly. Serena's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly covered it with forced cheer. "How are you feeling today?" "Oh, you know," Trisha said, adjusting her pillow. "Living the dream. I've got 3 nurses fussing over me and a machine that beeps if I even think about moving. Honestly, it's like being a celebrity without the red carpet." Serena shook her head. "You always find a way to make me laugh." "That's the least I can do," Trisha replied. "You work too hard and send every penny you make so I don't get kicked out of here." Serena's eyes dropped, guilt pressing heavy on her shoulders. She thought of the sandwich in the trash, the hunger pains that clawed at her belly each night. Trisha didn't know. She couldn't know. "You don't need to worry about that," Serena said quickly. "Just focus on getting better." Trisha studied her through the screen, her gaze sharp despite her frail body. "Serena, you're hiding something." "I'm not." "Yes, you are," Trisha said. "You always get that look when you're keeping a secret. You did the same thing back at the foster home when you used to sneak food onto my plate and pretend you weren't hungry. Don't lie to me now." Serena's throat tightened. She wanted to confess everything, how she'd gone days without eating, how humiliation had burned her alive in Justin's kitchen. But she couldn't. Not when her sister was already carrying so much. "I'm fine, Trish," Serena whispered, forcing a smile. "Really? I promise." Trisha sighed, but she let it go, choosing instead to change the subject. "You remember what you told me when we were kids? That one day we'd have our own house. Big enough for 2 bedrooms so you wouldn't have to hear me snore anymore." Serena laughed through tears. "I still want that. And we'll have it. You'll see." Trisha nodded, her eyes closing for a moment as sleep tugged at her. "As long as we're together, that's all that matters." The screen flickered as the nurse gently adjusted Trisha's blankets. "Time to rest," the nurse said softly. Serena's voice cracked as she whispered, "Good night, baby sister. I love you." "I love you too," Trisha murmured before the call ended. Serena sat there for a long time, staring at the dark screen. Her chest rose and fell with quiet sobs, though she tried to swallow them down. Guilt gnawed at her. Guilt for hiding the truth. Guilt for being too weak. Guilt for not finding a better way. But under all that pain, a flame burned. Determination. She would not stop. She would not give up until Trisha was well again. What Serena didn't realize was that she hadn't been alone. Just outside the slightly open door, Justin Brooks had stopped in the hallway. He hadn't meant to listen, but the sound of Serena's laughter, soft and broken, had caught him. He heard enough. The jokes, the coughing, the fragile love between sisters who only had each other. For the first time in years, Justin felt something shift inside him. He remembered his own mother, thin and tired, skipping meals so he could eat. He remembered the night she worked 3 jobs and still went to bed hungry, whispering, "As long as you're okay, Justin, that's all that matters." He clenched his fists at his sides, anger boiling not at Serena, but at the world. A world where someone like her had to starve just to keep her sister alive. That night, Justin made a decision. He called the hospital quietly, using his name to unlock the files. He confirmed the bills, the cost of the surgery, the desperate notes from doctors urging for immediate treatment. And then he signed the papers himself, transferring the funds without hesitation. Trisha Henson would get her surgery. The next morning, Serena was startled when Justin appeared in her small quarters. He stood tall in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I spoke with your sister's hospital," he said bluntly. Serena's heart stopped. "You, what?" "I covered the cost of her surgery," Justin said simply. "It's done." Her hands shook. No, you can't. That's too much. I can't take your charity." "This isn't charity," Justin said, his voice firm. "It's what should have been done long ago." Tears welled in Serena's eyes, but she shook her head fiercely. "I don't want to feel like I owe you. I've fought too hard to stand on my own." Justin's tone softened for the first time. "You don't owe me anything. You've already given more than most people ever could. This isn't about debt. It's about saving your sister's life." Serena's defenses cracked. The weight she'd been carrying, hunger, shame, fear, crashed down all at once. She sank onto the edge of her bed, burying her face in her hands. For a moment, the room was silent except for her quiet sobs. And then she felt it, a hand on her shoulder. Not commanding, not cold. Just steady. Justin Brooks, the billionaire who once roared at her for eating from the trash, was standing beside her. Not as her employer, but as a man who finally understood. In that fragile moment, something unspoken passed between them. A bond, still small but real. Not of power and status, but of shared pain, sacrifice, and a glimpse of humanity. That night, Serena lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her sister would live. The crushing fear that had haunted her every step was lifting. And though she still didn't trust easily, she couldn't deny the truth. Justin Brooks was changing. And maybe, just maybe, so was she. The mansion felt different now. It wasn't just Serena's new role. It was the way people moved when she walked into a room. Some avoided her eyes. Others whispered less than before. The atmosphere was cautious, unsettled. Justin Brooks had announced it plainly. "From now on, Miss Serena Henson is head of operations in this house." The staff had blinked in shock. A maid, the girl they once mocked, was now in charge. Some scoffed quietly. Others stiffened with resentment. But there was no arguing with Justin's voice. His word was law. Serena, however, wasn't thinking about power. She was thinking about responsibility. If she was going to hold this position, she couldn't let the same cycle of cruelty continue. She had lived through the whispers, the false accusations, the humiliation. Now it was time to make sure no one else suffered in silence. It didn't take long before cracks began to show. In the first week, Serena noticed something odd in the vendor logs. Fresh produce was listed at triple the usual price. Cleaning supplies were marked urgent every month, though half the bottles sat unused in storage. When she asked about it, staff grew defensive, their answers clipped and awkward. And then there were the wages. A quiet young dishwasher slipped her a note one morning, hands shaking. It read, "I haven't been paid in 2 months. Every time I ask, they tell me to be patient." Serena's chest tightened. She started digging quietly, combing through files late at night when the halls were still. The more she uncovered, the angrier she became. Some staff were underpaid, their hours cut on paper but not in reality. Vendors were overcharging for supplies that never arrived. And someone inside the estate was signing off on it all. This wasn't just unfair. It was corruption. When Serena showed Justin the files, he studied her face more than the papers. "You're serious about this," he said. She nodded firmly. "I won't stand by while people are being exploited. I know what it feels like to have no voice. I won't let that happen under me." Justin leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Do what you need to do. You have my authority." Serena blinked. "All of it. All of it," Justin repeated. His tone was cold as always, but there was something else beneath it. Trust. The next morning, Serena gathered the staff in the grand hall. It was the same place where she had once felt invisible, where whispers had crushed her spirit. Now she stood tall, holding the vendor logs in one hand. "Some of you know me as the girl who scrubbed floors," she began, her voice steady. "Some of you know me as the maid who fainted on the staircase. And some of you believed the lies that I was a thief. But today, you will know me for the truth." The staff shifted uneasily. No one spoke. "I have found records of underpayment. I have found vendor scams that steal from this household. And I have found signatures that prove it wasn't an accident." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes darted toward the back where Harold, the estate's purchasing officer, stood pale and sweating. Serena raised the papers. "These signatures are yours, Harold. You overpaid vendors, pocketed the difference, and silenced workers when they complained. You used people's fear to cover your tracks. Not anymore." Gasps filled the room. Harold stammered, stepping forward. This is nonsense. She's lying. She's..." "Enough." Justin's voice thundered from the stairs above. He had been watching. "The evidence is here. And Serena speaks with my authority." The hall went silent. Serena's gaze didn't waver. "Harold, you betrayed not just this house but the people who keep it alive. From this moment forward, you are dismissed. Security will escort you out." 2 guards stepped in, and Harold's protests were drowned in the heavy sound of footsteps as he was led away. For a moment, no one moved. The staff stood frozen, eyes wide, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. Serena lowered the papers, her voice softening. "I don't want fear in this house. I want fairness. If you work, you'll be paid. If you're honest, you'll be respected. No more whispers, no more silence. That's how we move forward." There was no applause, no cheering. But something shifted. The same people who once looked at her with suspicion now looked at her with something new, respect. Later that evening, Serena stood in the quiet of the study. Justin entered, his usual sternness softened at the edges. "You handled that well," he said. Serena turned to him, her voice calm. "I only did what was right." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "That's why you're here. You're not afraid to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is." For a man who rarely gave compliments, the words meant more than he realized. Serena exhaled slowly. She was still the girl who had once crouched by a trash bin, starving and invisible. But tonight, she was also something else. A survivor. A leader. The household had changed. Fear had turned into respect. The city skyline glittered against the night sky as Justin Brooks sat in his office, papers spread across his desk. 4 years, this room had been where deals were made, fortunes multiplied, and power guarded like a crown. But tonight, the air felt different. Across from him sat Serena Henson. No longer the timid maid who once crouched near a trash bin, she sat tall, her gaze steady. Justin leaned back, his eyes fixed on her. "I've made a decision," he said. "It's time I stop building towers that scrape the sky and start building something that touches the ground." Serena frowned slightly, unsure. "What do you mean?" He slid a file across the desk. On the cover, bold letters read, "The Brooks Foundation. A fund," Justin explained, "to support domestic workers. To help families drowning in medical debt. To give people like your sister a chance without forcing their loved ones to starve. His voice softened. This isn't charity. This is balance. Justice, maybe. Serena's hands trembled as she picked up the file. Inside were pages of plans, numbers, and proposals. But what caught her eye was her own name printed beside his. Co-director. Serena Henson. She looked up, stunned. Me. Why? Justin's gaze didn't waver. Because you know what it feels like. Because you've lived it. And because you remind me of who I was before I let money harden me. You carry a fire I lost a long time ago. And if this is going to mean anything, it has to be built with you. Serena's chest tightened. For so long, she had been treated as invisible. Now she was being asked to lead. Not as a servant, but as an equal. Days later, Serena stood in a hospital room. The machines beeped softly, but this time the sound wasn't heavy. It was hopeful. Trisha, her younger sister, was recovering from surgery. Her cheeks had color again, her smile brighter than Serena had seen in years. You did it, Trisha whispered, squeezing her sister's hand weakly. You kept your promise. Serena's eyes filled with tears. No, we did it. You held on, even when it hurt. And now, we have a future. Trisha chuckled softly. I'm proud of you. Not just for me, but for everything. You never gave up, Serena. You turned pain into power. Serena kissed her sister's forehead, a wave of relief washing over her. For the first time since childhood, she felt like the world was finally lifting its weight off her shoulders. Back at the mansion, the air was different. The staff who once whispered and judged now stepped aside when Serena entered the hall. Not in scorn. Not in suspicion. But in respect. Heads dipped. Voices quieted. And for the first time, she wasn't walking through shadows. She walked with pride. Justin watched from a distance, a faint smile crossing his usually guarded face. Later that night, he found her standing by the garden, her hands brushing against the flowers she had once been too busy to notice. You changed this mansion, he said quietly. Serena turned, her expression calm but firm. I only did what needed to be done. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. You also changed me. When I saw you that night in the kitchen, I saw weakness. But the truth is, you were stronger than anyone in this mansion, including me. His voice dropped lower. You reminded me of my mother. She used to skip meals so I could eat. She believed survival was dignity. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. But you brought it back. Serena swallowed hard, emotions swirling. She wasn't used to hearing softness in his voice. But she knew this wasn't pity. It was respect. And so, a new legacy began. Not one built on skyscrapers or cold contracts, but on fairness and hope. The Brooks Foundation launched quietly but boldly, its first act clearing the medical debts of dozens of struggling families. Serena sat beside Justin at the press announcement, her name spoken aloud with honor. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a leader, a survivor, and a voice for those who had none. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Serena walked through the mansion one last time in her old uniform. The same halls that once echoed with whispers now echoed with silence. The same walls that had seen her humiliation now saw her triumph. She paused at the kitchen doorway, her eyes falling on the trash bin where it had all begun. For a moment, her heart clenched, remembering the shame of that night. But she didn't bow her head. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked away. Because the shocking truth had never been about theft. It was about love. It was about survival. It was about dignity. And now, finally, it was about justice. If this story moved you, don't leave without hitting the like button and subscribing to Tales by Amani. Every week, we bring you powerful stories of resilience, sacrifice, and unexpected triumphs. Share this video with someone who needs hope. You never know whose life it might touch.